for the rest of his life. And he tells my class that before the accident, he was selfish, he was uncaring, he was uncomposed. But the accident changed him to his core. And after the accident, he became much more caring, much more focused. In fact, he tells my class blindness allowed him to truly see what was important in his life, like friends and family. He also tells my class he's the only man in America who could walk through Home Depot and never see anything he wants. But that's his joke, not mine. David Metter allowed me to see that the old science of loss is incomplete. I think a lot of you are familiar with the old science, Kubler-Ross. She investigated people who are dying, and she discovered they went through these stages: anger, denial, depression, bargaining, acceptance. Well, David just didn't accept his lot. He just didn't bounce back. He was not just resilient, he bounced back even higher. He transcended because of his tragedy. He turned tragedy into transcendence. He used this adversity as a superpower for personal growth. In fact, David exemplifies one of my favorite quotes from Michelangelo, who said this: "I saw the angel in the stone, and I carved until I set it free." I love that quote. There's so many people, when they're hit by a tragedy, a painful adversity, they act like they're frozen in stone. They build a fortress around their heart, and they don't let anybody in. But there's other people like David Metter who use the tragedy like a chisel to free their authentic self, to become the person they were meant to be. And I wanted to discover how these people could do that, how they could turn tragedy into transcendence, because I know a lot of people are stuck in that pain. I had a lot of pain in my life. I lost my dad at an early age. We had a few miscarriages before we had our son Miles. But there's some people that are still stuck in that pain, and I wanted to help them get unstuck. So I investigated people from all over the world who said they had turned tragedy into transcendence. I investigated a woman who lost her husband and a daughter in a Mumbai terrorist attack, and she said it was terribly painful, but she said afterwards she became a better person because of it. I interviewed a man who was an addict who overcame his addiction, and then he went into the ministry so he could help others with their addiction. And I was looking for 3 or 4 or 5 factors that led to their transcendence. But I didn't discover factors. What I discovered, to my amazement, is that they all went through these same stages in the same sequential order to transcendence. But it makes sense because Kubler-Ross discovered stages. We all know Piaget discovered cognitive stages of development. There's physiological stages. So why not stages of transcendence? And the first stage is this. The tragedy acted like a wake-up call and literally slapped them in the face, and they said they realize they're not on the path they should be, they're not as happy as they want to be, and they must change. A lot of them said it was like they were sleepwalking, and the tragedy slapped them in the face, and they awoken to their life. And that led to the second stage. They flipped the switch. They realized that this terrible, terrible moment had purpose in their life. And because it had purpose, they need to change. They need to get out of their comfort zone and move in a new direction. And because they're out of their comfort zone, they realize strengths and talents they never knew existed, which led to the third stage. They released their genius. And once they released their genius, they moved into the fourth stage. They create a new life song. And a life song is this. It's when your life is aligned with your true purpose. And when that happens, you have joy and contentment beyond compare. You live in your flow every day. And once you create your new life song, it led to the fifth final stage. They live in their we spot. And the we spot is this. They let go of the ego. It's not about what they can get and what they can achieve, but what they can give. They move from a me mentality to a we mentality. And once they do that, they give off this amazing energy, and the world responds to them in kind. And I know you've heard about stories like the father who loses his son to a terrible disease, and he starts a charity. But I don't believe you realize they went through these stages. But once you see these stages and know about them, you'll see them everywhere. You'll see them in books. You'll see them in magazines. You'll see them in movies. You'll see them in tweets. Okay, maybe not tweets, but you'll see them everywhere. You'll even see them in stories you've heard about and recall. And the story is about Petra Nankova. She's a supermodel, and she was vacationing with her boyfriend in Thailand in the resort, and the tsunami came in 2004. Remember that story? And that wave took her boyfriend out to sea, and he lost his life. And that wave took Petra, and it pummeled her, it broke her bones, but it also lifted her so high she could grab on to the palm fronds of a palm tree. Can you imagine how high that was? And as she's hanging on for dear life in terrible pain for 8 hours, it didn't compare to the psychic pain. Because as she's hanging on, she could hear the children calling for help. Please help me. Please help. Please help. Can you imagine that? And as the water receded and she got rescued, she realized, this is my wake-up call. She flipped the switch and she said, I'm going to start a charity for children, and I'm going to build schools. But Petra never started a charity, so she got way out of her comfort zone. She started realizing strengths and talents she never knew existed. She became a great organizer, a great fundraiser. She went back to school to gain her business savviness. And to date, she started a charity called Happy Hearts Fund, which has opened more than 100 schools throughout the world, and this is a school opening. And Petra knew she was in her sweet spot when one of the headmasters comes up to her and says, Petra Nankova, you are our guardian angel. She said that was some of the sweetest words she's ever heard. Think about it. Petra Nankova was all about superficialities, projecting her image. And that tragedy changed her to her core. And now she is a person of positive impact who has influenced the world in amazing ways. Tragedy doesn't have to beat you up. Tragedy doesn't have to pummel you. Tragedy can lift you higher. You can fall up. And when I learned about this research and I discovered these stories, it changed me to my core, because I started thinking differently about the world. I started teaching differently. I started speaking differently. In fact, it gave me a jolt of self-awareness, because I didn't realize it at the time, but I too had gone through these stages. About 8 years ago, 3:30 in the morning, I was waking up and I was getting like a panic attack. My head was getting all tingly, my head was pounding, and I started taking really shallow breaths, and I just said, just relax. I went back to sleep. I know some of you have that same feeling early in the morning. And I was thinking, why would this happen to me? I was a professor, I was living a good life, I was playing golf almost every day. And then I get the wake-up call, Dr. Phil. Remember when Dr. Phil was on Oprah on Tuesdays? So yes, I watch Oprah, please don't judge me. And this woman was describing the same exact feelings that I had. And he said to her, you're in a bad relationship, your physiology is calling you out, and you must change. Well, I didn't realize at the time, but I was in a bad relationship with my career. And my physiology was calling me out. And I must change. Yes, being a professor is a good life, but most professors would tell you there's a superficiality to it. Most students want to know, is Dr. Steinberg, is this going to be on the test? And how do I get an A in your class? And do I really have to buy this book? So, yes, you have to buy the book. I needed a deeper connection. And so I started writing my own books. I started speaking around the world about purpose and meaning, and that feeling went away. It vanished. But I knew I was in my wee spot when I get this email from a Brazilian priest, and it was in Spanish, and I don't speak Spanish, so I had to de-Googleize it. And I had written earlier, I had written a book called Flying Lessons. It teaches parents how to build emotional toughness in their kids so they can soar into life. And it was translated in Spanish. And these words by the Brazilian priest were some of the sweetest I've ever read. It said, God bless you, Dr. Steinberg, for writing Flying Lessons. We love your book. Can we use it in all our church schools? And I thought, heck no. No, I thought, yes, see, of course. And I posted that email in my office, and I looked towards that for great emotions.